Hi, and welcome back to Module 5, Chill Out on the Stress, or Managing Your Stress. Now, so far in this program, you've been learning the sounds of the language. The first half of Accentuate the Beat, the first almost half of the big program, is in fact mastering the sounds, the pronunciation, because you can't go forward making those sounds become musical and take meaning if you don't know how to make them. So it's very important that you just take your time, build the foundation, master one module, move on to the next, move on to the next. Okay. Now we're moving into the fun part, way more movement and the musical part, stress, rhythm, and intonation. And we're going to start with stress because that's the first vocal feature that we need to work on in order to get all the components together. Now, speakers must stress certain syllables in words, otherwise the words will be misunderstood or they will sound strange. Now let's look at our first comparison. The old war vet was now an invalid. Invalid. Bum, ba-dum. Compare that with, sir, your ticket is invalid. Bum, bum, bum. Now, those words have different meanings. You wouldn't want to go up to the old war vet now and tell him that he was invalid. An invalid, someone who is now disabled, in a wheelchair perhaps, but still very valid. But a ticket can be invalid. The date has passed, whatever, however you look at it. But you would never want to go up to the old war vet and say, oh, you're invalid, because you would just take away all of his dignity and meaning as a human being. And as we referred in one of the previous modules, it is the President of the United States that lives in the White House. Sarah lives in the White House. And if you put the stress on the wrong word, why suddenly you would give the impression, if you put the stress on white, you would give the impression that you have moved into the residence of the President of the United States of America. And unless you have, you would be saying the wrong message. So let's look down. We are going to look first of all at the difference between nouns, and there are some nouns, as you know, that can also be said as verbs. For example, present. Present. Use that S, that continuant S, to get you down from the high note to the low note. Present. And compare that with the verb to present. And now that S goes to a strong Z, and it gets you up to the top note. Present. Conduct versus conduct. Notice how the O in conduct goes to schwa. Conduct, the noun, conduct. In this module, there is no home study section because I want you to take all of these words and I want you to make sentences with them and record them. And are you saying them the way in which I'm saying them? Because that's your goal. Okay, so let's take a look at a series of these words, nouns on the left-hand side of your page, verbs on the right-hand side of your page. Listen, pay attention to how the relative vowel sounds kick in and change according to the stress on the word. We'll read across. Conflict, conflict. The world has a tremendous amount of conflict. He was conflicted as to what to do. Conduct versus conduct. Say those, please. Conduct, conduct. Notice the change in the O. Good. Make sentences with them, please. Content versus content. Content, content. Desert, dessert. Desert, dessert. Also, the noun dessert that you have after dinner is pronounced the same as the verb. I mean, as I told you, no sooner get a rule, and some word is going to come along and break that rule. So to have chocolate cake for dessert is the same as to desert somebody, to leave them, to abandon them. Digest, digest. Do any of you read the Reader's Digest? It takes a long time to digest fried food. Contest, contest. Permit, permit. Exploit, exploit. Can you hear the different stress patterns? Bum, bum. That's the noun on the left side versus bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. High, low, low, high. Long, short, short, long. There are different ways to express the same thing because they do different things, you could say. They go longer if they're up top, and they're a little louder. And they go short if they're on the bottom. Exploit versus exploit. Object, object. Increase, increase. I want you to make sentences with each one of those words and comparing the noun, high, low, long, short, to the verb, low, high, short, long. Okay, you can use your hands. However you hear the music, the stress. It's a stress-driven language. So, the high note will be followed immediately by a low note. The notes around the high note will always be subservient to that high note because that high note takes the beat, it takes the stress. And that's what we mean when we say it's a beat-driven language. Bum, 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 bum. That's how we speak. That's how we speak. Bum, 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 bum. Really, the pattern, that's how we speak. Bum, 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 bum. Ding, 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 ding. That's the sound of that phrase. Okay, let's go to some rules to remember. These are rules pretty much you can take to the bank. The majority of two-syllable words, the stress will fall on the first syllable. On the majority, not all. Tuesday. Awful. Ever. Brother. Get your tongue there. Brother. Oven. Window. Now, just because we're focusing on stress does not mean that you forget how to articulate those sounds, okay? You bring everything with you. That's what I mean. You've built a good, strong foundation. So make sure you bring that with you because we're building. So all of a sudden, I don't want to hear brother. I want brother. Oven. Okay. Compound nouns take the stress on the first syllable, whereas compound verbs take the stress on the second syllable. Bedroom. What kind of room? Bedroom. Stoplight. Hear the music? Bum, bum. Da, da. Stoplight. What kind of light? A stoplight. Schoolhouse. The old schoolhouse. Bum, bum. Bookstore. Bookstore. Now listen to the difference to the compound verbs where the stress is going to come on the second or last syllable. Outdone. Outsmart. Outrun. Overlook. And you hear that that first syllable is down low, and it has to be down low so that you can go up. You can't go up if you're already up. You have to start low so that you can get up and emphasize that stress or that syllable with the beat. Okay, number 3, here's a point I want you to listen up because, even we native speakers struggle with this, the difference between 30 and 13. Now, we often have to say, was that 3-0 or 1-3, especially when we're on the telephone. But there's very simple rules, and when all of us remember it, we can all communicate better. But listen, if you ever have to say, was that 1-3 or 3-0, please do not feel bad. Because I could be speaking to my sister and say, was that 3-0 or 1-3? Did you mean 30 or 13? And if you hear, now that you know high-low versus low-high, I think it's going to be easier. Now, the difference here in the multiples of 10 do not accentuate the T. It's not 30. See, that's going to get you into trouble. 30 sounds too much like 13 because the hallmark of the teen is that it starts with the T and the T is loud. 13. The first syllable, thir, is low. 13. But in 30, I actually take it almost to what we call a soft D. Listen, 30. So the TY, the T sound goes to D, and it's really low, and it's short. 30, 13, 40, not 40. If you say 40, you got it up here on the same step, and nobody will tell if it was 40 or 14. So do yourself a favor and break the syllable after the R. 40. You can still say the T if you want, although it's very dangerous. If I were you, I'd take it to a soft D. You'll always be heard. 40. I'm not talking slang. I am a well-spoken woman. I say 40. I don't say 40 because I want you to understand me. But I say 14, and I cross that T, and I start that second syllable with the T, and that T takes me right up to the top note. 14, 15, 16, 17, but 50. Now, we don't say 50. We don't turn 50. We keep a T there, but we soften it. 50, 60, 70. They're very, very gentle T's, and they go down to the bottom as opposed to the teen equivalents. So make sentences all week long with those numbers, okay? And really get clear. Now remember, if you're on the phone or you don't hear clearly, never feel bad about mishearing and having to ask, because we all do. We all do. We speak quickly. And we native speakers, we make mistakes too. This is why quite often I don't go back and make these tapes absolutely perfect. No siree, I make mistakes too. And I want you to feel comfortable. Language is living. It's alive. And anything that's alive can make a mistake. And so we make mistakes quite frequently. Just little tiny things. We're not totally cognizant of every movement of the mouth that we make. So when I make a mistake, I'll just correct it. I don't go back and start the tape all over again. My goodness, I'd be like a robot. Language is human. It's the expression of the human being. So be human. Don't worry about making mistakes. Okay, let's go to hearing notes. You keep hearing me say it's a 3-beat language, a 3-note language. Well, let's start simply with a little bit more of the 2-syllable, 2-note words. Now, if a word has 2 syllables, it's only going to have 2 notes. Can't have 3, obviously. Now, I want you again to make sentences. I'm going to say the words, and I want you to notice how do the vowels change according to the stress pattern. I want you to hear the difference. I want you to become clear with the difference. And when you can really hear the difference, I want you to make sentences with each one of these words. Now, let's start with the left-hand column, stress on first syllable. Apple. Bum, bum. That's the rhythm. That's the stress. Bum, bum. Apple. Table. Mother. Jacket. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, I brought my jacket. I'm going to see my mother. Please sit at the table. I would love to eat an apple. I'm not exaggerating when I tell them in the repeat after me voice. Maybe it's a little tiny slower, but the pitch difference is not exaggerated. Let's go to stress on the second syllable. Repeat after me, please. Notice what happens to the first syllable, how it's right down there on the bottom note, also called the bottom step. Around. You have to say it. It's a beat. If you don't, you've got round, and that's a different word. Around. Bum bum. Invite. Hear that short, the difference? Invite. Bum bum. Allow. There's really only one L in the pronunciation of allow. It's allow. But we write it with two L's. Superb. Hear the difference in the music. And you see there, I've asked you to make a list of 2-syllable words and practice them and put them into sentences. And if you don't know for sure, go to dictionary.com. Please use dictionary.com because it mimics my accent and the stress pattern that I'm using. Okay, let's move to the 3-note or 3-syllable words. Now, some of these words may have more than 3 syllables, but the point here is that they're going to have the 3 notes. Now, let's do the words on the left-hand column, where the primary stress, the primary accent, the primary emphasis, the primary intonation is on the first syllable. I've just given you a whole string of words that all mean the same. Where you put the stress is the emphasis, the accent. It all means the same, okay? Accident, bump, ba-dum. High, low, medium, accident, accident. Good. Personal, personal. Can you hear it? Bum, ba-dum. 70, 70. Not 70, 70. Yesterday. I saw him yesterday. Very good. Put them into sentences because that way you'll contextualize them, and many of you, almost all of you, have natural rhythm patterns that you don't know you have. So that's why I want you to put them into sentences, and you're going to be quite surprised. Tape yourself, and you will know. Most of you will know when you hear yourself if you're saying it correctly, because most of you have what we teachers call passive knowledge. Means you know a lot more than you know you know. And so when you go to use them, as we are now, and as I always say to my students, you know them. Now I want you to be aware, and I want you to put them in your toolkit. And the only way to do that is to keep putting them in sentences so that they're contextualized, so that you can hear them. Now let's go to primary stress on the second syllable. Let's put the emphasis on the second syllable. Let's put the beat on the second syllable. And remember, all the syllables around the syllable with the beat are going to be subservient. They're going to take a lower place. They're either going to be on the bottom note or they're going to be in the middle note. Let's listen up and repeat after me. Listen to the first syllable. So low. Acceptance. Ac. It is ac, and then it's not acceptance. Many of you think that the 2 C's together there is the sound of S. It's ac. Acceptance. Acceptance. But it's really acceptance. Say it again, please. Acceptance. I got my letter of acceptance. See how short that first syllable is? Acceptance. You already know. Banana. I'd love to eat a banana right now. Examine. Examine. Bum, bum, bum. 3 notes. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Ta. Not 2. Ta. Schwa. Because it's de-stressed. It's low step. Low note. Tomorrow. If an O goes to the bottom note, it's going to go to schwa. Tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow is equal stress. Don't yell at me. Tomorrow. See you tomorrow. It's equal stress. I'm not deaf. Your partner, probably who you're speaking to, has good hearing. So put some music in there. Tomorrow. Very good. Put it in a sentence. Now, here are some words that with the emphasis or the stress on the final sentence, final syllable. Most English words don't have the stress on the final syllable. However, English takes words from all over the world, and English has stolen many, many words from the French language. And a lot of them, kitchenette, cigarette, E-T-T-E is a French ending, cigarette. Bachelorette. If it ends in E-T-T-E, thanks to the French, we will put the stress on the French sound. And so we should, because we stole the language from the French, we should at least give them a little bit of emphasis and accent. Afternoon. Good afternoon. Did you ever know that when you said good afternoon, you're saving all the big stress for the noon? Good afternoon. Ba-dum, ba-dum. That's the rhythm. Personnel. Personal. Personnel. Changes the rhythm. It's beautiful. Comes from French. Personnel. It's beautiful. 17. 70. 17. Isn't that beautiful ending? Teen. It's got music. It's beautiful. It's long. It glides. 17. Recommend. Recommend. Repeat these words, tape these words, and try very, very much to sound like me. Now, I want you to practice these following words on the last page of this unit. There is no home study, as I keep telling you, so there's just you practicing. If you don't know the sound, they're pretty much marked there which syllable is going to go up and take the stress. Tape yourself. Does it sound right? Trust your passive knowledge. So many of you go to correct yourself when you've already been right. Don't do that. Trust yourself, because you know a lot more than you know you know. I know that sounds silly. Think about what I'm saying. If it's difficult, you know more than you are aware that you know. So tape them. That's your homework. Put these into sentences, get your telephone and record yourself. If you're not certain, go back over this video and listen to me. And if you want to expedite it and you don't want to hear the entire video, go to dictionary.com, put the word in, hit the speaker, and say it exactly the way that they say it, and you do it over and over again, because that voice, which is usually a male's voice, will mimic my accent, and that is the standard North American accent, and that is the language that you are learning here. Okay, get to work. We're now going to go on to rhythm. Rhythm is fun. You've got to understand there's a difference between invalid and invalid. Master them. Get the stress patterns right so that now we can start doing cream and sugar. Because that's the rhythm. And if you don't know the stress, my dear students, you cannot move on to the rhythm. And it's all about the rhythm. So, and when we get the rhythm straight, then we go to the intonation. And by then, ta-da, you will be ready for the master class. Okay, get to work. And I'm going to ask you to work on it for about a week. And I'll see you next week. Okay, bye. Work hard.